Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX. Well, let's take a look at some of the top stories. A British man who drove into pedestrians and stabbed a security guard outside a Manchester synagogue has been shot dead by police, prompting British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to reinforce security at synagogues nationwide. Israeli forces have intercepted nearly all boats in Gaza Sumud Flotilla, including one carrying Greta Thunberg, who claimed in a pre-recorded video that she was abducted by Israeli troops, sparking global protests in many countries, including Italy and Turkey, amid rising diplomatic tensions. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has said that Cairo, along with Qatar and Turkey, is pressing Hamas to accept President Donald Trump's ceasefire plan to end the nearly two-year war in Gaza. The proposal unveiled by the White House this week calls for a hostage prisoner exchange, Israeli withdrawal, Hamas disarmament, among other demands. Drone sightings has forced Munich Airport to halt flight operations on Thursday night, which resulted in 17 cancellations and 15 diversions and disrupted nearly 3,000 passengers. This incident has been followed by similar drone disruption in Denmark and Norway. The airport has resumed its operations now. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung urged North Korea to resume family reunions for the 36,000 South Koreans separated since the 1950 to 1953 war, calling it a humanitarian responsibility ahead of the national holiday. The last reunions took place in August 2018, but ties have frosted since North Korea even dismantling the reunion facility. Sean Diddy Combs is facing a potential sentence of more than 20 years in prison following a high-profile trial that has formally requested mercy from the presiding judge. The petition represents a crucial moment in a case that has sent shockwaves through both the entertainment industry and the broader public. Vietnam's death toll from Typhoon Waloi has now risen to 51 people, with 14 still missing and 164 injured, as the central bank urges banks to support affected businesses, according to local government reports. While the storm has caused an estimated $603 million in damage. The death toll from the collapse of the boarding school in Indonesia has risen to 8 people, with nearly 60 students still trapped under the rubble. Rescuers using cranes and sensors continue to search through the debris after the building collapsed during afternoon prayers, leaving mostly teenage boys dead or injured. Now we move on. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Moscow is seeking a full-scale restoration of relations with the United States, despite what he called natural disagreements between major powers. Speaking at the Valdai Discussion Club in Sochi, President Putin acknowledged deep divisions between Washington and Moscow, but he emphasized the importance of respectful dialogue. He further praised the current U.S. administration for being direct about its interests. Let's listen in.
Видим, что сегодняшняя администрация США руководствуется прежде всего интересами своей собственной страны, так как она их понимает. Полагаю, что это рациональный подход, но тогда, извините, и Россия оставляет за собой право руководствоваться нашими национальными интересами. Одним из которых, кстати, является и восстановление полноформатных отношений с США. И какими бы ни были противоречия, если относиться друг к другу с уважением, то торг, пусть даже самый жесткий, упорный, все же будет иметь целью сойтись, а это значит, что в конце концов взаимоприемлемые варианты.
Now, we stay on this topic. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that cutting off Russian oil would spike global prices above $100 per barrel. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump has urged Europe, India, and China to stop buying Russian oil in order to reduce Moscow's ability to fund its war in Ukraine. Let's listen in.
Невозможно себе представить, что выпадение объемов, скажем, российской нефти сохранит нормальные ситуации в мировой энергетике, в мировой экономике. Невозможно. Но если представить себе, что можно вывести за скобки российского производителя и российских трейдеров, которые обеспечивают значительную часть нефти на мировом рынке, если это произойдет, ну цены взлетят сразу до небес. За $100 все улетит мгновенно.
Meanwhile, he has also criticized Europe, claiming that EU leaders are whipping up hysteria over a potential war with Russia. This comes as Poland and NATO allies shot down Russian drones in Polish airspace last month. President Putin has also warned Europe against provoking Moscow, calling the continent's militarization exaggerated, and has urged leaders to cool down and focus on their own issues. Russian President Vladimir Putin has joked on Thursday that he would not fly drones over Denmark anymore, referring to incidents last week that forced the closure of Danish airports. Russia has denied responsibility for such incidents, which have prompted European countries to discuss plans for a drone wall. Here's what he has said.
Вы в Данию столько дронов посылаете.
Не буду больше.
Да, не надо больше,
больше не
пожалуйста.
буду.
Вот.
Не буду больше ни во Францию, ни в Данию, ни в Копенгаген. Куда еще-то летают? На эти самые,
Да везде долетают.
Да, в Лиссабон, и куда они летают? И, вы знаете, там развлекаются люди, которые когда-то развлекались по поводу неопознанных летающих объектов, НЛО. Но там столько чудаков, как и у нас, кстати говоря. Ничем не отличаются, особенно молодые люди. Там они сейчас будут запускать вам каждый день. Каждый день, боже мой. Вот и пусть ловят там.
Now we move on. An Islamic school in Indonesia's East Java province suffered a collapsed roof as students congregated for afternoon prayers on the 29th of September. At least 8 people have been killed, while some 59 remain trapped in the rubble. Rescue efforts are underway in full swing. Parents of the missing and trapped children await more news and have been waiting for the last 5 days now, as authorities race against time to rescue the children who were present in the school at the time of the incident and are now trapped under the rubble. Here's the mother of one such student speaking about the day of this incident. Let's listen in.
4 anak saya yang nomor 3 itu bilang, Bu, ini ada pondokannya KUP roboh. Pertama saya nggak percaya, masa sih Wong Mupi barusan telepon. Nah, ini kenapa pondokannya KUP sih, Bu? Loh, iya. Ya dari situ saya langsung habis maghrib itu nunggu ayahnya pulang, saya langsung tugas ke sini. Apa benar, saya ngecek toh, ternyata benar ya. Oh mas, saya nggak tahu robohnya seperti itu, saya nggak kuat nahan teriakan itu supaya Mufi itu bisa mendengar suara saya. Dari situ saya shock gitu, ya Allah. Saya kalau mengingat nggak bisa, sekali nggak bisa nahan nangis saya.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by John Robin. He's a journalist from Narasi TV, joins us live from Jakarta. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, what more can you tell us about this situation with this incident?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Today, the National Disaster Management Agency suspects there are still around 58 people buried. As of Thursday afternoon, 108 people have been evacuated. Sadly, there is no sign of life from the rubble anymore, according to one of the ministers who visited the location yesterday. Search efforts remain ongoing until now. At least 332 joint personnel from various agencies were deployed for the evacuation operation, and they began using heavy equipment for the rescue today. And the challenge is the building structure is vulnerable to collapse again, and the injured were immediately rushed to several hospitals for treatment. The hospital stated that one of the patients had to have his left arm amputated because it was trapped under the rubble. This was done due to the life-threatening situation. Another victim was also in serious condition. His lower body was crushed, requiring intensive care in the hospital, but his life could not be saved. So far, the authorities have reported 8 deaths until today.
And Jun, what measures should Indonesian government take for such incident so that these kind of things do not repeat?
Right now, the police have to conduct an in-depth investigation into the cause which is responsible for this incident. Sanctions must be given firmly so such incidents do not repeat. And several other cases have occurred in Indonesia in recent years, and so it is raising concern about the quality of structure buildings as well as building safety standards in Indonesia. Government permits must be tightened, and the government must socialize and strengthen safe building standards in Indonesia for the future.
And Juan, who will be held accountable for this?
Yeah, I think the Indonesia's National Disaster Mitigation Agency suspects a construction failure, saying the foundation pillars may not have been able to support the weight of the concrete work, causing the entire structure to collapse to the ground. However, the exact cause has yet to be determined. A representative from the boarding school suggested the collapse also may have been caused by weak reinforced concrete. At the time of the incident, the building was undergoing the final stage of renovation, which involved concrete casting on the upper floor, a project that had been going for approximately 9 months. They also already apologized for this incident. And the East Java regional police have announced that a team will be deployed to investigate the site. All the activities at the boarding school have been suspended until further notice, and I think one who will be held responsible is the building contractor, because so far the strong suspicion is that the building structure is poor.
And lastly, Juan, did the school issue any statements yet?
Yes, they already apologized to the family of the victims, and they already state some cause from about this incident. Like they said, the building was undergoing the final stage of renovation, and maybe the building construction is not good enough to hold the building, so it's collapsed. The whole building is collapsed. That's the only statement that already issued by the representative of the boarding school.
Are the parents and the victims' families, are they satisfied with just this statement?
I think not really. The families also want justice, of course. So I think we can wait for the police investigation about the incident, and we will see who will be held accountable for this incident.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Juan Robin for joining us from Jakarta and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on and we stay in Asia. Vietnam's government disaster management agency has reported that the death toll from Typhoon Waloi and associated floods in the country has now risen to 51 people. The storm, which made landfall on Monday in northern central Vietnam, has left 14 people missing and 164 others injured. Additionally, as per revised reports by the agency, property damage caused by the typhoon and floods now totals up to $603 million. The typhoon has severely damaged roads, schools, and offices, causing power failures and affecting tens of thousands of families. More than 230,000 homes have been either damaged or inundated. The report, however, has not indicated any major damage to industrial properties yet. Meanwhile, according to Deputy Governor Pham Thanh Ha, the Central Bank of Vietnam has urged other banks to support firms hit by the typhoon. They are advised to consider loan restructuring or temporary freezes, which could help the businesses recover from the disaster. Now, President Donald Trump's administration has asked U.S. colleges to sign a deal on some sweeping terms, ranging from foreign enrollment and diversity to ideological values of students and staff to get preferential access to federal funds. According to a 10-point memo sent by the government, the memo demands that schools cap international undergrad enrollment at 15% and ban the use of race or sex in hiring and admissions. freezing tuition for 5 years, required that applicants take the SAT or a similar test, and quell grade inflation. This has caused some discontentment among the students, who have expressed the hope that President Trump will reconsider in spite of his previous dealings with American universities. President Donald Trump's administration has asked U.S. colleges to sign a deal on some sweeping terms, ranging from foreign enrollment and diversity to ideological values of students and staff, to get preferential access to federal funds. According to a 10-point memo sent by the government, the memo demands that schools cap international undergraduate enrollment at 15%, ban the use of race or sex in hiring and admissions, freeze tuition for 5 years, requiring that applicants take the SAT or a similar test, and quell grade inflation. This has caused some discontentment among the students, who have expressed the hope that President Donald Trump will reconsider in spite of his previous dealings with American universities. Let's listen in. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what impact could this Trump administration's proposed 10-point memo have on the diversity of student population and the overall international reputation of U.S. colleges?
Zuma, good to see you.
Thank you.
What this is actually about is challenging basically what the administration feels is anti-American sentiment and teaching that comes from these universities, and challenging values that they disagree with and what they actually believe in. So in regard to all the DEI, they are then diversity, equity, inclusion. They're also concerned that academic standards are lowered, and it seems as though the results are going up. But where are the academic standards? That's what they want to see measured. And also, as you've just said, in regard to students taking those tests before they actually come into university, are those tests standardized? And what is the rigor of those? That's what's very, very important. And also the other thing is, of course, is that universities have relied on international students, the amount that they pay for fees, which is far higher. And also then the Trump administration has then been looking at the amount of who is actually investing in universities. So if the UAE, Qatar, etc., is then investing in universities, do they then have power over what is taught or an ideology that's pushed? And we also have to remember the pro-Palestinian protests that have been going on American universities, and also the fact that dear Jewish students have been censored, have been attacked, their lessons have been disrupted, and other fellow students thinking that they should be barred from coming to the universities in the way that they've carried out behaviour that we've seen over the last 2 years. And also, if we remember when the ex head of Harvard University, surname of Gay, then coming on. And then we remember this congressional meeting and then being challenged about the conduct and the anti-Semitism that is on these universities, and then saying things, well, things have to be, put in a context. Well, my context is we look through history in regard to these universities and what's gone on, especially in Harvard, where in 1934, you are inviting over to Harvard to speak, the foreign press secretary of Hitler. And people may think, Mark, well, why is all this relevant? We have to go back in history and look at who is influencing who. And within education, if you then want to influence future generations, then if you are like the Trump administration who cares for American values, you are going to look at this as a whole and look at what's been happening over the last 2 years and before that, and turn around, especially if we go back to the lead up to the first Trump administration, and go back to all of the history of what's gone on in Berkeley, for argument's sake, in universities and the disruption of that. So what is taught, what is then going in the mind of young people is a concern of the Trump administration. Asuma.
And building on that now, looking back at these challenges that U.S. universities could face if they don't comply with the memo's requirements?
Well, some of these universities have huge trusts. They're extremely wealthy, but they also are relying on the federal funds. Some educational leaders there have said, we will comply. We will be listening to what the Trump administration has been putting out and the challenges that it has actually done to the universities. We may see some bodies question this, but it's also about the federal funding. And the Trump administration will be strict on that and withdraw that unless, as it's just come out, here's some 10 points. Please adhere to this, and then we can move forward. This is going to take a little bit of time, especially as there's been a shutdown there in regard to having this discussion and pursuing it forward. Asuma.
Right. And how might this change, or because since they're putting a cap of 15%, how might this change the international students coming into US? Do you think they will go to UK instead, or maybe Australia instead?
Well, again, that is all up in the air. It's a bit like with in regard to the visas, in regard to the tech side of things, and suddenly China is creating a different visa, so it's trying to get certain brains into China now that there's that opportunity that they may not be going to America because they've got to pay such high fees to then get in and work for various companies. We're gonna wait and see. But the other thing is that the big challenge for the Trump administration is they've got 3.5 years to put a root and branch educational standard through. This is a huge job because you are tackling such ideology, such a number of things that have been going on for many years. You've got to really back up and reverse many things as I say, that have been going on for a long time. Asuma, who knows in many ways, but yes, people will be having to rethink this. Plus also, they're looking at they need to be looking at training their own young people within America. And if you passionately believe, as we may have seen, that a college child goes off to college. As a parent, you release them. You think they have certain values, certain beliefs, and they go off to college and completely and utterly change. And as a parent, you don't recognize them when they come back. And this is what the Trump administration is saying. We don't recognize a lot of these young people anymore because they are not adhering to traditional American values and valuing the nation that they actually live in. So civics, which has not been taught properly for a long time in American schools, is another thing that I'm sure that they will look at, because that is the whole that is the secondary education part before people then move on to universities and college. That's why I say it's a huge job, but they are determined to tackle it. In regard to international numbers, we will see. And of course, some universities will be going, oh my goodness me, that's a big revenue stream. That's why Trump is putting part of this 10-point plan forward. You may be losing that revenue stream, but we will back this up with federal funds. But this is what you have to do to get that. Asuma.
And Mark, do you think, well, we can only speculate here, but do you think that other countries, other Western countries, which is popular for international students studying abroad, do you think they might follow this suit of keeping this kind of points so that they can keep their own civic sense or their own values?
Time will tell, but we cannot sit here and deny it. There is an ideological war going on, and our education system is where that ends up being the biggest fight, because if you are training young people in regard to how they think, they will then take that into the wider world once they've left university. There's part of me that says, I hope it does. I hope it does as well, because there are certain things that we see going on in universities around the world. On a personal level, I don't agree with. We need to then challenge that. But as you may say, but Mark, we need to get the balance with free speech. Yes, I hear that. But the problem is that when people are then speaking, in many cases, say with the war with Gaza, with Hamas and Israel, that we have to remember history. We have to talk about many years of history to then be able to talk about that issue properly, in my opinion. And that is what part of this is all about, which is actually teaching history, teaching where you come from, what's important about your nation, what are your nations done, and actually buying into that. Because the ideological fight is, you could say on the one hand, is against people that believe in nation states and people that do not, and believe in globalism and want to create one big utopian dream that would make someone like Lenin extremely proud. Asuma.
Yeah, right. And Mark, how do you think that it's realistically achievable, since for the past few decades we've seen US have a lot of immigrants, and now there's second generation, some even fifth generation. I've met American fifth generation people from immigrant families. So don't you think these people have already brought in their culture with them, and it will be very difficult for Trump administrations to revive what they call American civic sense back to students?
Well, the other thing is that if you do go to America and you go to the flyover states, you will then be very rest assured that there is that values that have built America are, on one hand, are very much alive. But if we keep but we see certain aspects of what's happening in California, for argument's sake, where that is being challenged. But it all depends. If we're watching certain media, we will then believe that things are not, on one hand, and not in a very good place. Then you're raising that whole issue, quite rightly, of integration. If you then move to a particular country, then you should respect that country's values and integrate and play a contributory role to the country that you have moved to. This is all about that. This is what one of the ideology of thinking that people are challenged. If you are then going to move to America and then over time have the thoughts of saying, no, we're not going to integrate at all, we're going to challenge everything that America is founded on and the Constitution of the United States, then understandably you are going to then collide with definitely with the present administration. And also to add in that regard, of course, America, we look in the past and we look at how much of immigration has taken place in regard to America. But again, it's that whole thing of assimilating, being part and being proud of the nation state that you have then learnt, the American Constitution, sworn allegiance to that, to America, and then you need to conduct yourself in that particular way. If you don't, then like with any nation, if you are then not integrating, then that does provide a balkanization of thinking, people into separate groups, and it then builds up to a variety of different problems, as we are seeing.
Yes.
As we are seeing in the world, Asima.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now, this has caused some discontentment among the students who have expressed the hope that President Trump will reconsider in spite of his previous dealings with American universities. Let's listen in.
I think it's honestly really sad because I feel like international students make up a good portion of our population here, and they make up what our university is. And I do have a lot of friends who are international students, and they're like some of the smartest, like coolest people I know.
This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.